I guess I came on schedule, right? Great to have you here. It took one of our bigger rooms to accommodate the interest in this event, and we're delighted to have you here. This is a part of Lilly Day at Purdue, a day a lot of us have been looking forward to for a very long time, and there have already been lots of great exchanges between Lilly associates and our students about the nature of research at Lilly, about the nature of employment at Lilly, and about one of the most important industry companies in our state, in the most important industries in the world. So we want to welcome everyone. The next 45 minutes will be devoted to a very special treat. David Ricks, Purdue 1989. Have I got the year right?
90.
90,
yeah,
sorry.
Close enough, yeah.
He was supposed to finish in 89, but the thing didn't.
That's actually true.
Yeah. Oh.
We can talk about that.
And now, still in his first year, I guess. Where are we? Time does fly.
First year, yeah, announced about a year
Still
ago.
in his first year as Lilly's chairman and CEO. So one of the most important jobs in the world of American business and the world of international healthcare. And so we're enormously proud of that. So we'll take the next 25 minutes or so. I've got a few questions for David, and then I hope you'll be formulating your own, because the rest of the time will belong to you. But thanks so much for being here, and thanks to all your colleagues for interacting with, by now, I think probably hundreds or thousands of our students. I'll ask you, because otherwise one of the students will. You probably don't like talking about yourself, but tell us a little about your personal career trajectory, and be sure to start here at Purdue.
All right. Well, Mitch, thanks for doing this today, and thanks to all the students who came out, and for our Lilly team in the room who's been out pounding the pavement looking for new recruits today, so I appreciate everyone joining us. I came to Purdue in 1985, and I did take 5 years to get through. But that's because I switched my focus in the middle and I had to take a step back to go forward. But I started in the engineering school and ended up doing a few co-ops and realizing I wasn't going to be a very good engineer in the end. A big part of life is what you're excited about. Switched to Krannert, ended up minoring in engineering, and got an industrial management degree. Mm-hmm. From here, went to IBM, worked in New York for them. I then returned to business school at the other great Indiana University.
Notre Dame? Or?
Not Notre Dame, actually. It's a third great.
Oh.
Yeah, just to be clear. Right? And people say, oh, you must love Indiana, because I grew up in California, actually. But my wife, who I met, also a Purdue grad here, was going back to medical school at IU, and so really, what I say to my Purdue friends is the only reason I went to Bloomington is for love. But
it's the only reason we accept.
That's right, that's right. But from there, joined Lilly in 1996. And Mitch, you were working at the company at that time. And it was really an exciting time in the company at that moment. In fact, this morning I had breakfast with Randy Tobias, who was the CEO at the time. And we were reminiscing on that. But a few years earlier, it wasn't such a great time in the company or in the industry, which is a good reminder about volatility. And from there, I started in the corporate center working on licensing and business development, worked in the U.S. business in marketing, and then was a sales leader for the Midwest, and then went to Canada, ran the commercial group there, and eventually was a general manager. And then I went to Shanghai for a couple of years, was the general manager there before coming back to run the U.S. affiliate, which is the job you did, back in 2009. I spent then a few years running what we call the biomedicines business unit, which includes the U.S. business as well as Japan, Europe, and then late-stage drug development for a big part of our pipeline until last summer when the board asked me to take the CEO job. So great career in one company. I never thought it would turn out that way. As I say to people, I'm about 4 or 5 jobs past the job I joined the company I dreamt of having. What could I achieve? I thought about that, running a business, running a P&L, which happened when I was running Canada. But it's been a great experience and a wonderful industry, as you said.
Well, it's common these days to say, gee, no one will spend their whole career with a single company anymore. But in fact, as you're as you're a perfect illustration, you've had multiple careers. They happen to be,
In one
the
company.
paycheck happened to come from the same place, but you've been able to do such a variety of things
Yes.
that your talent made possible. You know, people, especially people who've never been close to one, throw around the term corporation and corporate in I think sometimes uninformed ways. A corporation is a community. A lot of them speak of themselves as a family. Lilly often, in many parts of Lilly they did. What would you say are the characteristics of the community or the family of Lilly, the culture of the place? Obviously it's evolved over time, but say a little bit, because I always felt it was a very, very special place to work, because in large part of the culture that grew up there.
Yeah, I think that's right. Of course, Lilly's an old company. We're celebrating our 141st anniversary this May. That's unique by itself. I think there's only a handful of American companies with the same name that have been around that long. And I think there's reasons for that. One of the strongest ones is the culture, or what it's like to work in the company. It's a company that deeply rewards expertise and technical advancement, which is usually a good fit for Purdue grads. It's a company also, though, that has a very humanistic side to it. People genuinely like to work with each other at the company. Having worked a bit on the East Coast, and no offense to our friends out there, but there's something different about working in our company. People actually spend a little more time caring about what's happening beyond the front door. We're neighbors and friends, many of us. And at the same time, I think it's also a very mission-driven enterprise. There aren't too many people, when you get to sort of the root of why are you here, who don't say, because I'm trying to do something to advance medicines for people who are sick. And because we all share that feeling, and whatever our expertise or talent is to advance that cause, I think it really gives us a bond, kind of a tribal component that's very strong. There are parts of the culture we want to adapt and change too. I think not unlike some of the talks I've heard you give, Mitch, we need to be more externally facing and global in our orientation. We need to be more collaborative. I was just at a collaboration meeting with Purdue, actually, directing a new collaboration we have here. And we just need to be faster. The world is speeding up, and we're a big company, but we're not the biggest, so scale can't be our advantage. We have to be faster than the people bigger than us.
Well, there's a sense I can just testify personally. I'm sure every business has a sense of mission of some kind, but as you put it, I used to say to folks, these aren't ball bearings we're making here. I understand how important ball bearings are, but
Right.
but the products that literally save lives, extend lives, improve the quality of life. If you can't be motivated by that, then you got to look in the mirror. What's coming? This is one of the definitive research-based, innovation-based businesses. You live or die is probably not too strong by the innovation that you produce or that you somehow acquire. What's coming from Lilly, and what are you excited about for the patients of today and tomorrow?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say overall in biopharma industry, if you're considering that for a career, there's never been a better time for developing products in the biopharmaceutical industry than right now. I think some of that is because the Human Genome Projects, which launched 20 years ago or so, which have given us tremendous insight into the biology. Some of the way that the business works now can just make medicines for things that were previously intractable and not druggable targets. I think that's quite exciting. And just our sophistication in segmenting population and understanding disease allows us to bring therapies that might be for smaller groups but have much greater impact. And all those things, I think, are unlocking enormous innovation in the sector. For Lilly, we're focusing on 5 key areas, which amongst the drivers of disability and mortality are amongst the top 10. Diabetes has been a long-standing business for, in many ways, our oldest business, which arose from a collaboration, which is a common theme, with University of Toronto in 1922. And we're still making insulin, but we also make many other products for diabetes patients. We're one of the world leaders in that space, and I think a very exciting innovation coming forward to help people, particularly with type 2 diabetes, lose weight, stay out of the hospital for cardiovascular risk, and live an otherwise normal life. Cancer, another leading area for us. And here, there's just an explosion of technology and opportunity. And we're not to a point where we're talking about curing cancer, but we are turning cancer into a chronic disease, which previously was unthought of. So people can survive the multiple bouts of metastases and tumor reappearance and live otherwise normal lives, live a pretty long time with cancer. And that's, I think, an enormous advance in our sector, and Lilly's been a part of that, will continue to be. We've launched a new business recently in immunology. So this is diseases where your body's misrecognizing yourself as a foreign entity and attacking autoimmune conditions like lupus or rheumatoid arthritis or psoriasis. It's a whole family of disease that is growing. No one knows why growing, by the way, but is afflicting people for a lifetime of disability. And there's also great breakthroughs there. And then finally, neuroscience is a hallmark of our business. We're famous for Prozac and the neuropsychiatry revolution of medications, which have helped millions of people, but now focused on neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, which is probably the last big disease that affects really a lot of people, hundreds of millions of people globally, that there is nothing. And we're a leader in that space. There's still nothing today, but we're optimistic about the midterm. And then also we're working on pain medications. This is very important because of the opioid epidemic, which we read about every day, which is really a misuse of a very old way to treat pain. Opioids don't treat pain particularly well anyway. And what we'd like to do is create new medicines that make it possible for doctors never to use opioids. And I think Lilly can be a big part of solving a public health crisis.
Yeah. Despite all the breakthroughs, the new tools, things you referred to, by some measures, the pace of innovation has been a little disappointing the last 10 or 15 years, but there are some obstacles maybe artificially put in the way. I mean, is it a fair description to say that we've seen fewer new molecular entities and new drugs than we wish we had or we thought we might? And if so, what's slowing it down?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's been cycles. So in the 90s, there was a tremendous explosion of approvals and new medicines. It slowed in the last decade. Mm-hmm. This decade's been better. Mm-hmm. And I think there's three contributors. One is the underlying science and the way you can target a biology and change it. And that's, as I mentioned earlier, that's expanded dramatically. The FDA and regulators play a key role, though, as well. And that's really about society's risk tolerance in the end. Mm-hmm. There were some medicines pulled off the market for safety reasons in the middle 2000s. To me, the FDA over-indexed then on conservatism, which is good in one sense that we don't approve medicines that could be bad, but that's actually a pretty rare event. It always was. But if we slow medicines that could be good, we're depriving people of a new therapy. So that's a policy question. I think we have a new FDA commissioner who's very much on his front foot in terms of speed of approval and unleashing innovation. So we're optimistic about the next few years. And the final thing, which is not going away and probably getting worse, is how the investment cycle works, and raising the question of, well, should I work on this? Could be a compelling innovation, but could I reward my investors for taking the risk of developing it? And that is getting more and more fragile. You read about that when you read about drug pricing. Mm-hmm. That's how consumers experience the economic problem. But companies have the flip of that, which is the uncertainty of being rewarded is going up dramatically due to the patent system, which has got problems, due to the market for reimbursement, which has got problems, and really the global nature of the business. There are whole markets which look difficult to even launch into. So that's, I think, the growing risk of the next era, which is, does the financial reward system incent companies to take the risk?
In addition to all the historic risks, you mentioned some say personalized medicine, more individualized or precision medicine, let's say, where it's much more knowable and certain that a drug will work for a given patient.
Yes.
But then by definition, there are fewer patients to sell it to, because you also know that all the people it won't work for. I can remember selling a lot of products for Lilly at $3 or $4 a day, and you'd sell them in mass quantities.
Right.
They were only going to work for a third, a half, 2/3 of the patients, but that's what we had. Now you have a drug for, I don't know, hepatitis C at $80,000 that absolutely cures it, if I understand.
That's right.
And yet people choke on the price.
Yeah.
Does the business model work as the science becomes more and more precise?
Yeah, I think that's one of the problems that as I was with the reimbursement system and the reward model. I think it's built for the 1980s in a fee-for-service acute care system where primary care medicines worked for some, but were cheap.
Right.
And now we have drugs that make profound effects in individuals, narrow groups, but the inventor has to recoup their investment across fewer people, so therefore the price has to be higher. And the system's not built for this. I think there's two big things that need to happen in our healthcare system to accommodate this, and I think they will. One is to stop managing drugs as one line item in a budget and rather think about it as a healthcare solution. Because drugs today, even though we talk about how expensive they are, et cetera, it's 15% of the dollar we spend in the United States is on medicine. So what's the 85%? Well, half of that's hospital stays. And who here would rather take a drug at home or go to the hospital? Everyone would rather take a drug at home. But those budgets really don't, it's hard to get at the value, reducing cost in the healthcare system and transferring it to an innovator for a drug. So that needs to change. We've got ideas about how to do that, but that's, I think, a significant issue. The other significant issue is that for a long time, pharmaceuticals were treated very differently from the rest of healthcare because they weren't a big cost. But now they're a big cost for a few and almost no cost for many. So 90% of prescriptions in the US are generic for common diseases, antibiotics you might need if you get a cold on campus, or if you can manage your disease like hypertension with a generic, it's virtually free to treat it. But if you have hepatitis or if you have a rare genetic disorder, you could be looking at $100,000 a year out of pocket. But what's insurance for? Insurance is for spreading out that risk. But our system has produced this outcome that needs to be reformed. That's a big issue.
Yeah.
It's a fairness issue.
What's it like to run a big piece of a global business in China these days?
Yeah. Well, these days it's changing, but I was there a few years ago. One of the most exciting jobs in my life. One of those jobs where you wake up every day and you look at your email and you really have no idea what your day is going to be like. China's exciting because there's enormous opportunity, a lot of unmet need. When I arrived there, we were selling our products in 16 cities. If you know anything about China, you know there's more than 120 cities with more than 1 million people. So you can imagine there's 104 cities we're not selling products in, and there's more than 1 million people. It seems, okay, let's go sell there, but it's not that easy. There's a complexity and a fragmentation that's really nothing like we experienced in the US or Western Europe. And then the policy environment's changing rapidly as well. They've gone from very basic economy to a pretty advanced one very quickly, and the rules and the systems really aren't fully caught up. So the government's working hard to catch them up, but that means literally month to month, sometimes the way you engage in a particular thing can change pretty dramatically, and therefore your risk, and you have to change your systems to accommodate it. Finally, I've found the people side of that to be just fascinating, both learning the Chinese culture, learning to work with Chinese people. It's a little different, but such passion, incredibly hardworking team we have there, and I have nothing but optimism for the long term for that part of our business. It's soon to become our third biggest market, and I think it's only a matter of time before it becomes our second biggest. Yeah.
Everybody with a job like yours, you'll have more than one, but name one stay awake issue that is on your mind more than most or all the rest.
I mostly worry about two things. I sleep well, actually, Mitch. But,
good.
I mostly worry about two things. One is stroke of the pen issues in Washington. So, so much of our business, half our business is the U.S., half of the U.S. business is Washington. Okay, so it's a quarter of the business. But in a moment, they could change a lot of things because of the way the laws are constructed. So you may have heard it's a little volatile there now. So that worries me. And particularly with this, not to get into politics here, but with this administration, I think the more pressure they're under to look like they're doing something and responsible, the worse it could be for us because we're a popular piñata for politicians. The second is actually about drug safety, and one of the most solemn responsibilities we have is to make sure that the medicines we produce and put into the world are safe as per the label. And you have two risks there. One is that we don't produce them with enough quality, or people misuse them according to their label, and then people get hurt. We've had in our history withdrawals for that reason, which is both ethically difficult but also financially not a good proposition. But then sometimes we're just learning, because you don't know everything. Back to the FDA, upon approval, you learn as you develop a drug, and we have to make adjustments. Will we see those problems or those safety issues early enough to warn people and redirect drugs use? I think that's a kind of crisis for any drug company.
You just reminded me of an episode, and let me just bear witness to what you said about the Lilly culture a little earlier. During my time there, it was reported one morning we get one of those emails, and that it appeared that the liquid form of our leading antibiotic, that a child there may have been something in the vial, an object that shouldn't be there, a piece of plastic or something.
Right.
And the company, and Randy Tobias was chairman at the time, we had no evidence of this, couldn't find any reason it would be true. Mm-hmm. But in the interest of maximum safety for patients, we pulled every bit of it from the market. It cost the company something like $50 million. It turned out not to be true. It was completely unnecessary. Yeah. But the company didn't hesitate. And I think those of us who were there at the time and later on felt we'd have made the same decision under any other circumstances. But that's the kind of company that you lead, and
that's right.
People here should know that.
Yeah, no, I remember that situation actually. And there's been others where that's happened. Yeah. And sometimes it is true. Mm-hmm. And then we have to figure out how that happened and make sure it never happens again.
Yeah. So one more question, then we'll open it up. But this is another one somebody's going to ask you if I don't. What's Lilly looking for in associates and new colleagues at the company? Obviously, you need people of various descriptions, but are there common traits and or skills, hard or soft, that you're especially interested in?
I think so. You know, Mark Ferraris here runs our talent development group, so he can help with this. But when we look back at who does well in our company, I think there's two concepts that really pop out. Of course, you need to be smart, and you need to know your field and be proficient. That's a basic. But I think the two words we use are grit and gratitude. And I think another word for that is just determination and humility. Mm-hmm. It's why Purdue people do well at Lilly. And we've got 1,600 Purdue grads in our company. It's the most by far of any other school in the U.S. And so, determination, it's not easy to graduate from the school. I know. Some of the most challenging intellectual endeavors I ever undertook were as an undergrad here. It's not always, in a corporation, it's not always sexy and exciting. Sometimes you got to put your head down and just get things done. And I remember as a freshman, I lived in McCutcheon Hall, and I had a 7 a.m. physics class, Physics 152, in the physics building. Maybe they still teach that class here. And I had to walk across campus in late November to get to a class that was absolutely difficult and hard. That's where it starts. Do you have long-term goals? Are you willing to work hard and sacrifice to get there? That's a big part of our business, and people who have that ethic do well. Yep. And then the humility, which is about intellectual humility, that often we are convinced that a certain strategy to affect a disease has got to be right until it isn't, and then we have to have the humility to go back and figure out why. Mm-hmm. Or just in terms of a business decision, sometimes you're wrong. But that's how we get a learning organization and get a culture where people always want to do better.
Thank you. Who's got a question? We have movable mics, as I understand it. So if we got a mic close to the middle aisle.
Hi, all right. Okay.
You gonna give him the mic? Oh, sorry.
I got a question.
Okay.
Right. So I saw some recent Lilly news that you guys are going for a resubmission on baricitinib, And I'm wondering how this run's going to go in comparison to the first run through the FDA.
Right, that's very recent news. It was announced this morning. And so it's good you're on top of it. So we have a medicine under development called baricitinib. It's initially being studied for rheumatoid arthritis, but it's for immunologic conditions, probably one of our more promising pipeline medicines. We submitted the FDA. After a torturous process, they told us that our submission wasn't sufficient to be approved in April. We had a series of discussions with them, including escalating the issue, and now they've changed their mind and said, go ahead and resubmit. This is one of the risks in our business. The FDA is one entity, but actually it's not. It's actually several divisions that all act a little bit differently. So some of the nuance and important sort of strategy work we do in our drug development is understanding what that division wants and how they will act. Some of this is rational scientifically, some of it, frankly, is not. And this one I would put in the second category. But we're going to resubmit soon. We're excited by that. And this is a drug that can help a lot of people with rheumatoid arthritis. We're also going to study it for other conditions, and it's a promising asset for us. So it's good news. Europe already approved it. Japan already approved it. Those patients in those markets are already using it. That's a pretty rare situation. Usually the US is first. So I think that also helps our case in getting back to resubmitting baricitinib.
Hi, my name is Chirag Patel, and I'm from India. I am doing a master's in technology leadership and innovation, which is quite a mouthful, but essentially it's technology management.
Okay.
I've been here for a year, and before I get to my question for you, and if you permit me, there are two, I'd like to say something to President Daniels. Like I said, I've been here for a year, and in that year I have learned of several instances of some very divisive rhetoric occurring in various locations across the country. In that year, I personally have not faced anything myself because of the environment that Purdue is in. Purdue did not have to, but they did constantly reassure students of the kind of environment that Purdue is. And I did not expect that, but it was really heartwarming. So I'd like to thank Purdue for that.
Well, there's no need. We can consider that a fundamental duty of to have an environment here that is safe and is welcoming and protects everyone's right to speak their own mind as long as they don't interfere with others, and that'll remain our policy. Let's hear your question for David.
Right.
But thank
you. You said you have a range of different job functions that you've served over the years. On your journey to being CEO, which functions do you feel have been the most influential in preparing you for your current role? And secondly, a behemoth like Lilly or even smaller companies, they thrive on diversity. They thrive on talent, not regardless of diversity, but especially because of diversity, regardless of origin. Does Lilly face any challenges from within or without the company in maintaining or building this diversity? And if so, what are the measures? And I do hope that this isn't looked at in the perspective of the last 8 months.
Mm-hmm. Well, the first question I'll answer briefly, and I'll comment a bit on your second. So probably two jobs come to mind. One is my first sort of real line job. I was a sales manager covering the Midwest for the company, and that sounds like a simple job, but the complexity is all in getting the most out of people. It's the first job I did where I couldn't cover for others' mistakes. And if I give you any career advice, I would say get to that kind of job as soon as you can, because you have to learn to work through others. And a big part of success beyond those first line management is getting a team of people to do something that maybe they wouldn't have done otherwise. And I think that's just been a vital skill. Made lots of mistakes, was able to learn from those, and I think that was an important role. The second one was my first P&L leadership job. We had all the functions around the table and total accountability. So when your name is superimposable with the entity you're leading, you know you're accountable. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, causes you to think pretty deeply about issues like the short term and the long term, about ethics and doing things right, and about really passion for a cause everyone can rally behind. So those are important jobs, which are pretty relevant as a CEO. In terms of diversity and talent, I think the company's been around 141 years for three basic reasons. One, a commitment to science, which is from the beginning. The second is our values, which relates to diversity in a way. And the third is just our commitment to organically hire people at a young age and grow them in the company, grow leaders in the science functions, technical functions, and in business. So a core part of that, particularly more recently, has been our strategy to really become a much more diverse and inclusive company. Just on the basics, as Mitch said, here at Purdue, we have the same exact policy. There is no place for harmful speech or anything that isn't reaching for a more inclusive environment. And recently we had to reassure our employees about that as well. We don't control the outside world, but we can control Lilly, and we're deeply committed to that. But it also goes into representation. Our belief, our strategy is to look like our markets. So that gives us several things that we think could be an advantage. One is insight, because when you grow up in a culture or in a situation, you have much deeper insight into it. It gives us, I think, a better shot at innovation, because innovation comes through difference, not through similarity. We need conflicting ideas, not similar ideas, to create innovation. And I think it just makes the workplace a more interesting and vibrant place. So there's more engagement, and it's a 21st century company. So we're deeply committed to that. It's one of our strategies back on campus in a big way to enhance our diversity. And we have this year set for the first time actually goals for management, for representation, for ethnic groups and women at all phases of management in the company. We haven't done that ever before. I'm not aware of too many companies that do. And so I think that's really helping us aspire toward the next step, which is to look like our markets.
Thank you.
Hello. First of all, thank you for speaking. I'm down here. President Daniels, thank you for helping make all this possible. One thing that I was wondering is small business is often prized for their ability to innovate and change and do things differently. And as being a part of leading such a large company, I was wondering how you encourage innovation, how you plan to encourage innovation in all aspects of the business, because that's been a topic that you've mentioned quite a few times.
Mm-hmm. It's core. I mean, innovation is our strategy. We're not trying to be a low-cost provider. We're trying to innovate the next medicine for a patient. I think it's probably the most challenging business problem we have, so I don't have a simple answer. We've undertaken a number of strategies to try to become more innovative. The two most spoken about ones are our collaboration and sort of external facing. Actually, our team here in the front row is here talking about that today with their collaboration with Purdue. We have several hundred early phase collaborations, several dozen later phase collaborations. Just we have to start with the notion that it's unlikely that most of the great ideas reside in downtown Indianapolis. They probably reside uniformly around the world, and we need to access those, particularly in the disease states we want to be making a bigger difference. We're pretty good at that. We could be a lot better. So that's a thrust in my administration I'm going to spend a lot of time on, which is opening up the company to be much more externally connected. Even if you decide to carry forward your own innovation, you have a much better awareness of what the alternatives are, so you're investing behind the right thing, and also you learn so much about a field by just talking to others. So I think that's a key one. Another thing we've done, and I think it's really expanded under my predecessor, John Lechleiter, was to diversify the location of our innovation hubs. This both enhances the external exchange, because there's something about location that really matters in terms of innovative hubs. So we're working with Purdue because we're in central Indiana. We should own the Midwest in terms of academic collaborations. But how about the coast? So we've built and just recently expanded a large R&D center in San Diego, just across the street from Scripps and UCSD. We've built a center in Cambridge as well. And we have a New York, a Manhattan, actually the largest wet labs in Manhattan are a Lilly site, which is focused on oncology research to access experts at Memorial Sloan Kettering and others. So diversifying that both puts us in the market where people who are good at this science want to work. They may not want to move to Indianapolis, but also gives us a chance to be rubbing up against the communities that are innovating and sort of hedge that risk of being only in Indiana. So I think we'll continue to expand along that line.
Hi, my name is Minji Dai. I'm a faculty member in the chemistry department and the Institute for Drug Discovery. Actually, yesterday I just got one email and my research group received a Lilly Grantee Award. So thank you very much for that.
Congratulations. Bravo.
And so, thank you. Actually, my question here is, what's Lilly's long-term plan or strategy to partner or maybe work with academic institutes?
Okay, well, as I was just saying, I think it's a key part of our long-term strategy. Maybe afterward you can find Andy Dahlem in the front row here who leads that for us. But what we're really good at is creating new entities that interfere with biology, so chemistry or biologics or whatever the next one is. We don't have a long or deep history in actually finding the biologic insight. And so that's a key place where we need to work with academics who are deeply incented to find new targets and understand biologic mechanisms. And then we can work with them to find a way to interfere with it to improve the human condition. I think that's a natural partnership. But the Purdue partnership we've announced is I think, about a few other things. So where are fields intersecting, where it used to be we thought of medicines as an organic chemical in a pill, more and more they're biologics that we inject. So there you have all kinds of biophysical sciences have to come together to have a user experience that works and get the volume under the skin at the right rate. So much more multidisciplinary. We can't possibly be good at all of those things. We've got some experts in those areas, but that's expanding rapidly. Now digital coming in because we envision highly automated delivery systems in the future. And then, I think the other thing we're working with Purdue on is leveraging sort of this cross-species insights. As you may know, as a researcher, we use mouse and rat models for all kinds of human disease. They're really bad models for most human disease. I think we've cured Alzheimer's in mice multiple times over, but it just doesn't apply to humans. So can we look at other species? The vet school here is a great vector for that. That's some of our focus now. And I'm sure that will expand because, again, we can't be good at everything, but we know what we are good at, which is creating new entities that can interfere with human disease. Those become drugs or medicines. Thank you for your question.
Hi. Here.
Hello.
Hello. So my name is Lottie. I'm a postdoc at Lilly Hall. And I have two questions. The first question is, when you were in 1989 or 1990, did you think about you're going to become a CEO? Or do you have a 5-year plan or 10-year plan whenever people ask us when we freshly graduate? That's the question one. Question two, you actually touched upon it. So I do research in terms of the drugs or chemicals in terms of the agriculture setting. And in our field, we already using microbes to cure disease for plants, etc. And just wondering, are there already microbes in the market that cure human disease, or how's the investment on that front for Lilly?
Great question. Yeah. So short answer to the first question is no, not even close. I mostly just wanted a job in 1990. And IBM was nice enough to give me one.
All your professors here now say, I knew it all
I knew
along.
him, yeah. If there's any in the room that are still working, I want to apologize. But, it's one of the, as I said, I even joined Lilly in 96, and I wanted to get to a certain kind of job, and I'm multiple jobs past that. That's how life actually works. I think people who might be in undergraduate or graduate peers saying, I know what I'm going to do, they don't. I think you want to know your principles and what you're passionate about, and then pursue it with vigor. Usually things work out pretty well if you do that. Microbiome and the use of bacteria to interfere with biology or to even understand biology is an exploding field in human health too. I'm not aware of marketed medicines for that, but it has two important applications for us. One is particularly in diseases of the gut, whether it be inflammation or in metabolic conditions. We have a growing interest in that. We don't have a core expertise, but this is an area we want to collaborate with academics to better understand ways to interfere with that or to augment that for human disease. And then Aaron Schatz here, who leads our animal science business, our medicines for animals. And of course, animal productivity and food productivity is an important topic. And one strategy, which we have some enzyme products actually, that you feed animals to have different outcomes in terms of their productivity, is perhaps an antibiotic-free way to keep animals healthy and keep them productive. So that's actually probably a little more closer to market than the human side, but both are interesting, and I think it's an exciting area of science.
Hello, my name is Lauren Primer. I'm a biological engineering junior here at Purdue. And my question is, we have come to see and understand what drives and motivates Eli Lilly as a company, but my question is, what personally motivates you, and are you process or results driven? Thank you.
Oh, wow.
You better get the second one right.
Yeah, well, I am results driven, I have to say, and yeah, to a fault maybe. Yeah.
Oh.
I tell the story of people ask, why are you driven anyway? And I think this starts like in third grade. I think how angry to get when you lose the game and so forth. And if you grew up at my house and participated in a card game, they often ended before they could end because there was such anger about the scorekeeping or what have you. So that's just in me. Process matters too, though. We need both kinds of people to win. I think what motivates me about working at Lilly is the mission we have. Some of the most memorable moments of my career. And it's a tough industry in a way because there are a lot of patient privacy and good policy reasons to abstract drug companies from patients. But actually, when you have that chance to contact users of a medicine where you've changed their life because of some small part you played, maybe you sold the medicine, maybe you made it, maybe you're part of the development effort, it just touches you in a deep way that no other business objective I could think of would. I remember earlier in my career, I was part of selling one of our antipsychotics, Zyprexa, and this is for people with schizophrenia, and I did a unique field ride where I rode with a doctor who was making house calls, basically. So he would go into homeless shelters and try to get people on therapy and out of their situation. And at the end of the day, he took me to a gentleman who was living independently, working, who was his success story, who had used our medication, one of the first people he treated, and was basically symptom-free for 4 years and living an otherwise productive, normal life. And so and that's why we get out of bed. That's what we're here to do, is change lives.
Hi, I'm very glad to see you too. I'm Brian, and this is my first year as a freshman at Purdue, and I'm very glad to be here and then to having this chance to ask the question. I have a very huge concern about our future career. Have you ever thought about, since you are very hardworking in your path, did you ever think about if something else like technology gonna replace the job we are currently have? And if so, how can you handle that? And what are you gonna do to take the action to change it?
So, sorry, what replaces the job?
What if the technology has replaced
automation.
these jobs?
Yeah. Well, we could have a whole nother fireside chat on automation. I think for a lot of roles, there will be profound change in your career and the rest of my career because of automations. It's already happening, probably first in the physical production world, where we're using automation extensively, where previously we wouldn't. I think the next wave that's happening is in routine white-collar work. I think it's a social issue in a major way we don't have time to go into here, but for our company, I think it's exciting in one way, which is it would allow our people who got into a field and work at a company like Lilly because of the intellectual challenge and the innovation of creating something new that didn't exist before. There is no automation on the horizon that's going to do that. And what we can do is take the routinized tasks and give them to a machine to do and let people have more time spending on innovation. There's an example. We're building I forget the name of what we call this, but it's basically a chemistry robot that can synthesize thousands of different organic chemicals and do it remotely and automatically. So this can free PhD chemists from being in a lab to focusing on the intellectual pursuit of creating something more useful using modeling or what have you, and make them more productive. So I think that's the positive side of it. The negative side is, I think some of the more junior level work won't be there in the routinized way it used to be. And I think if I was a student, I'd be thinking about how do I develop myself to be on the winning side of that equation versus the side that could be replaced.
Our agenda says we have maybe time for one more, if there is one. Got one down front that's been waiting.
It's been said that America is on the forefront of fighting disease, but is doing a very poor job at promoting the overall wellness of humans. Is there anything that Eli Lilly is doing to promote wellness in human beings?
Yeah, I think it's a great comment and an accurate one. If you're sick, you want to live in the U.S., but it's not the best place to stay healthy. I think that's a fair thing. The first responsibility I feel is to our workforce and our employee base. And there we have a number of initiatives to try to make our employees healthier. We have work to do there, honestly, because the environment we're in. The way we live has changed so much now that we have to work to stay physically active, and we've automated everything else. And so, we've built fitness facilities, we've got fitness programs, we've got disease management programs for people who do have a chronic disease. And prevention is the best cure for anything, so that's the food we eat and the way we live. We also participate in a couple regional initiatives that I think are quite important. One called Jump In, which is really about childhood obesity. And it's an education in school effort, basically, to decrease the rates of childhood obesity. That initiative's had some impact. Actually, to be honest, I think we could do a lot more in that regard. That's a Central Indiana partnership we're part of. And then we're starting something pretty interesting as part of what's called the 46201 project. So that's a zip code on the Near East side of Indianapolis, which has just about every health metric you could look at is at the bottom of the state. And if you ranked it against whole countries, would be in the third world. So the idea is, rather than a lot of entities who are well-meaning, sprinkling our efforts here and there, to have everyone just sort of focus on this zip code and see if we can get a model that actually changes the health status of people. Everything from infant mortality, and we're very focused on diabetes prevention in that setting, partnering with St. Vincent's and other health systems in Indianapolis. So it sounds small, it's one zip code, but that's how difficult the problem is. And so we're focused on that. We have other initiatives globally, global health, et cetera, that are also important to us. Thank you.
Well, David, this remarkable presentation has shown anyone here who didn't already know what a spectacular organization you had. I have said to people countless times that Lilly was the most meritocratic place that I've ever worked or expect to. And it rewards all the qualities you talked about and the character as well as the skill that you personify or embody. And so I just want to tell you on behalf of all your fellow Boilermakers, we are really, really proud of this latest collaboration, this new chapter in the relationship, but we're even more proud of you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Mitch. Appreciate it.